Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Michael Ayala. We'll get you back to court in just a moment. But first, I have some updates on some of the other stories Court TV is tracking. First, in Texas, it took the jury just 3.5 hours to find Uriah Urick guilty in the teen lovers killed grandmother trial. No word on when sentencing will take place as of yet. And in Florida, former NFL star Antonio Brown has been arrested on an attempted murder charge stemming from a shooting after a celebrity boxing event in Miami. According to an arrest warrant, Brown is accused of grabbing a handgun from a security staffer after the boxing match on May 16th and firing 2 shots at a man that he had gotten into a fist fight with earlier. Today, Brown will return to Miami after he waived his extradition. And in California, the mother of missing 9-year-old Melody Buzzard has been arrested, but not in connection with her daughter's disappearance. Officials with the Santa Barbara County Sheriff's Office say Ashley Buzzard was taken into custody on a felony charge of false imprisonment that's unrelated to Melody's kids, but they would not give any more details. All right, let's head back to Tennessee now, where we're in verdict watch in the Broke My Heart murder trial. The jury has been deliberating now for nearly an hour, 56 minutes. Latasha Daniels faces up to life in prison if convicted of first-degree murder in the shooting death of her lover and former pastor, Brodus Perry. The jury will be able to consider lesser charges, including second-degree homicide, voluntary manslaughter, and reckless homicide. Daniels took the stand yesterday and became very emotional when testifying about that shooting and when reading a suicide note that she wrote to her family when she contemplated taking her own life on the very day of the shooting. Now, while we await word of a verdict, we want to still catch you up on more of those closing arguments. Right now, we're going to go back in and we're going to listen to the state's rebuttal.
You've heard all the evidence and most of the arguments. And the assumption at this point, based on our history, is I'm not going to be up here for an hour and a half, right? And I thought about that yesterday and more today, and I hope you appreciate that. But I don't want you to take that to mean that I don't have anything to say about this case, or that I don't want you to understand how significant that the proof is on this case, because it's significant. And it's almost so clear that it just doesn't take a whole lot of time to explain it to you or to prove it to you. So if I can just take a few minutes to go back through there just to remind you of what we're looking at. The proof is clear even by her admission that she got a text that morning that said this relationship is over. I don't want to be in it anymore. And that shouldn't have been and probably wasn't a huge surprise to her. Because for the past months, weeks, she was even going to break up with him at one point. You know, really since he had moved from Little Rock, the relationship hadn't been the same. So what did she do in response to that? And she can tell you, this is what I plan to do, but the proof is she immediately went to buy a gun and immediately drove to Memphis to find him. 3 hours. And that's not disputed. She says, I was going to kill myself. But she wound up in Memphis with him. And she wound up at his house. She was still there when the police arrived. She shot him multiple times and shot Tabitha Perry Archie in the process. I mean, that's overwhelming proof of intentional premeditated murder, and she agrees all that happened. Do you remember there was a discussion, I believe it was in jury selection, about we do things different here than we do in the real world? I mean, I don't really know what that means. Because what we know is that in the real world, Brodus Perry is not here to tell this story. That he was shot and killed in his own home in front of his wife. And we know that Tabitha was shot while kneeling next to her husband, trying to protect him and help him and begging her to stop. You know, there's a lot of talk about reflection and judgment, cool, calm, and collected. Well, she was cool, calm, and collected enough to say, according to her, Tabitha, get out of the way. She doesn't remember anything, but she knows she didn't mean to shoot Tabitha. I mean, that's in the real world. And this is hard, I know. Talking about Tabitha, it's a good time just to point out, I mean, there is transferred intent. And so we don't have to prove she was trying to kill Tabitha. Just that she was trying to kill somebody, and she was trying to kill somebody. She did kill somebody. And in that process, she shot and caused serious bodily injury to Miss Archie. So when you have a case like that, with those facts that line up perfect, I get the text, I go buy the gun, I drive to Memphis, I show up at his house, and I shoot and kill him. You got to come up with something as a defense, right? So the defense is, I'm the victim. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit in a minute, but I want to talk to y'all a little bit about who she is, who is claiming that she's the victim in this case. It's an almost 40-year-old grown woman who has a doctorate degree, who has been twice married and twice divorced, who runs her own business, and who voluntarily entered into and started this affair with Brodus Perry. She admitted that. I liked the way he made me feel. I was wanting that kind of relationship at that time. She knew he was married. She had dinner with, she played tennis with his wife. She knew that Tabitha wasn't aware of this affair. You know, there's rules. Brodes had rules. Well, I mean, one of the rules was we've got to talk to each other on this app that's not easily traceable. Is that a rule? Or is that what you would expect? Two people who were married because they were both married when this started, that they might come together and say, you know, we probably don't need to text each other and email each other on our phones and on our computers, because we got to hide this. Is that a rule? Is that manipulative? Can't go out in public with just the two of us because we don't want to be seen as a couple. Is that a rule? Or is that what you expect? When two people who are married decide they're going to have a sexual relationship and hide it from their spouse. Is that manipulative? Did she ever say anything about he forced me to be in this relationship? Did I miss something with that? Or did she say she liked it? She wanted it to be in that relationship. I can't put your plane tickets on my card. Is that a rule? Is that what you call that? You know, she couldn't make one trip, so she said, so I decided to go on the Jerusalem trip because I couldn't make it on wherever the other trip was, Cuba or something. So, hey, I want to go on this other one because I didn't get to make that one. Is that you're expected to go? Or you want to go hang out with the married guy of my friend at a hotel room in Israel? Which is it?
All right, the state wants this jury to keep their eye on the real victim in this case. We're going to take a break, but before we do, I have an update on another live trial that we've been following out of Iowa. It's called the Metal Pipe Massacre Trial. Luke Truesdell is accused of beating these 4 people to death with a metal pipe. Brent Bound, Ramondus Cooper, Amanda Parker, and Kiana Ryan. They were all found dead in June of 2024. The defendant allegedly told police that he committed the murders because he wanted to, quote, make a movie. But the jury won't hear that statement unless Truesdell testifies and opens the door on cross-examination. And he might end up testifying because now he's pointing the finger at his father. His defense says that Luke's father, Larry Truesdell, was not properly investigated. Swabs from his hands were not tested, and he was able to move freely around his property, which was also the crime scene. Here's today's testimony from one of the arresting officers on direct and some of his cross-examination as well.
Your Honor, if I may have the screen clear again. Thank you. Sergeant Payne, was it determined by you and other law enforcement officers that the defendant was going to be placed under arrest after he admitted to you and Sergeant Egley that he had hit the 4 people with the pipe?
Yes.
And did these events occur here in Linn County?
They did.
And then I believe we saw on your body cam, after swabbing Larry's hands, Larry was allowed to move freely at that point.
Correct.
And we heard a little bit, it was your understanding that the blood you were seeing was Brent Brown's blood, correct?
Correct.
But you don't know whose blood was actually on Larry's hands, correct?
Correct.
And to your knowledge, those swabs from Larry's hands were never tested, correct?
That's correct.
Now, court has ended for the day, and the jury is set to return on Monday. Truesdell is facing life behind bars without the possibility of parole if he is convicted. All right, let's take that break now. When we come back, we're going to hear more of the state's rebuttal argument in the Broke My Heart murder trial, so keep it here on your front row seat to justice.
Tonight on Closing Arguments, a 10-year-old arraigned on attempted murder and rape charges after a brutal attack on a little girl. We'll bring you the latest in this tragic case.
Closing Arguments with Vinnie Politan, tonight at 8/7 Central, only on Court TV.
Did you murder her mother to try and drive her back into your arms? Oh my God.
Interview with a Killer. New episode Saturday night at 8 Eastern and Pacific, only on Court TV.
All right, folks, we'll get back to that state's rebuttal argument in a minute. I want to first bring in our guest for this hour. Joining us, criminal defense attorney Silva. Silva, great to see you as always. Thank you so much for joining me on the program. And first and foremost, as this jury is deliberating, we can see they're about an hour and 12 minutes in. And by the way, folks, if they don't reach a verdict tonight, they are going to come back and deliberate on Saturday. So we'll see how that sort of plays into all this. Let me ask you about that. When you find out, as a defense attorney, in particular, that a jury will have to deliberate on a weekend, does that bother you?
Oh, it always bothers me, Michael. First of all, hi, my brilliant friend, and happy Friday, and thanks for having me. And yes, you know, my heart always sinks, Michael, when we finish a closing argument on a Friday, because the jury just wants to go home. They want to go back to their regular life. And some of the wishy-washy people will actually commit to a verdict just to go home. And that's kind of a nightmare for defense attorneys because they'll usually follow a group think. And I say nightmare because in a case like this, we know, right, it's not disputable that she shot him, right? It's indisputable that he was shot by her and killed by her. And so if a jury is kind of teeter-tottering and they really want to go home, you know, they're going to find her on, you know, the highest count because it feels like a lot of people are going to want that count and the wishy-washy people will follow the ones that are the loudest on the panel. So yeah, our heart sinks. We like when deliberations happen early during the week because the jurors understand they have to come back. It's kind of like their job. But deliberating on a Friday night or a Saturday, oof, Michael, I'm glad it's not me.
Yeah, I would have to agree. And we've been listening to the rebuttal argument, and they did this a lot in their initial close. They're trying to make sure that this jury understands who the real victim is. What the defense did, they almost tried to paint the defendant as the victim. And I think they're doing a great job now on the rebuttal and, again, in their original closing argument, making sure this jury understands, no, folks, she's not the victim here.
Michael, you nailed it. Remember, I'm always on your show saying how imperative it is for the defense to have a story, because the defense are the storytellers. We're the ones that bookend, that explain emotions and passion for our clients. But the prosecutors here actually did a great job. We can, even though this man is not likable, I mean, he was having an affair, it is obvious that he did break this woman's heart and broke her into committing murder, honestly. Whether premeditated or not, right? It would have never happened if the affair didn't happen and they were both married, and that's aside the point. But yeah, the problem here is the prosecutors, they kind of took the breath away from the defense argument that this woman, I watched her testimony yesterday, the fact that she had this life where her father was abusive and she saw what he did to her mom and her relationships and how much she cared about this man. It did make me have sympathy for her. But I think really what the prosecution did is they kind of robbed her story from her and really gave voice to the victims, which again is leading the jury back to what the real issue is. I think what the prosecutor is doing, Michael, is trying to prevent jury nullification, where the jury knows she's guilty, but they might be so emotionally backing her, they might, find her not guilty just out of sympathy. So he did a great job on rebuttal.
Yeah, and I truly believe jury nullification at this point, after listening to all the evidence, is really her only shot. So good thing there being done by the prosecution. All right, Silva, stand by. I want to take folks back into court now for more of that state's rebuttal argument.
I don't want you to call 911 if there's some kind of medical emergency. You were staying in a hotel room with the person you're having an affair with. Do you want her calling 911? How does that make Brodus Perry manipulative? She drank bourbon with him. She smoked cigars with him. She knew about his interest in this book. She read the book. She understood that he was interested in this non-monogamy lifestyle. She even tried to recruit one of her friends to help him out with that. A 38-year-old grown woman with a doctorate degree who run a business and has been twice married and twice divorced. One of the things that happens when you kill somebody is there's only one side of the story that gets to be told, because there's only one person that's left alive. And so we spent a lot of time talking about how bad Brodus Perry was. We played videos for his widow and made her sit there and say, no, I didn't know that. He was lying to me. It seems illogical, but it's sometimes easier to feel sympathy toward the person who's still alive than it is the person who died. Because that's the only story you get. And she made terrible decisions. And you feel bad for her because she made those decisions. But they were her decisions. If Brodes was here, would he say, I'm sorry, I wish I hadn't done that way? We'll never know, will we? Did he make mistakes? You know, I want to quote to you from the jury instructions because I think it's important, because you can't look at her and say, I feel sorry for her because she made that decision. This is a quote. You can have no prejudice or sympathy or allow anything but the law and the evidence to have any influence upon your verdict. So feel sympathy toward her, but don't let that affect your verdict. You would be inhuman not to feel sympathy toward her. But we talked about earlier during jury selection how sympathy and prejudice are not appropriate, and how you look at the facts, and if you determine that she intentionally, unlawfully, and premeditatedly killed him, it doesn't matter how sorry you feel for her. Because you're not supposed to use sympathy. Was Brodes honest? He lied to his wife. He lied to his church. He lied to two people in a book club on an app where they sent videos back and forth to each other who he had never met. You want to be married to Brodes? Maybe not. Did he lie to the defendant? I don't know if we know that. I mean, she knew he was married. She knew they were hiding the affair. She knew Tabitha didn't know. She knew about the book. She knew he wanted a non-monogamous lifestyle. She knew that early.
All right, we're going to take a break here, but first, I do have an update in the love triangle beheading trial of Davine Michaels going on in Nevada. Michaels is accused of killing and decapitating her boyfriend, Jonathan Willett, in August of 2023. Now, according to prosecutors, Michaels and Willett agreed to him moving in with her and their two daughters that they share, but at some point, Michaels became concerned that Willett would disrupt her current family life with their daughters and her husband, his son, Devier Willett. Now, Devier is, again, the victim's son from a previous relationship, and he testified yesterday that he began having a sexual relationship with Michaels when he was 19, while Michaels and his father were still dating. He also told the jury when Michaels and Jonathan broke up, he moved in with Michaels, and the two of them eventually got married. Devier also denied killing his father, even though the defense alleges that he did. And during testimony today, the medical examiner testified that there's no way to tell how Jonathan Willett was killed.
You would agree with me that you can't say to any degree of medical certainty that this person was actually dead when this decapitation occurred, correct?
In my opinion, this decapitation was a post-mortem event, so yes, after death.
Okay. How close in time then? Do you know?
I do not know.
Today you've just testified that it's homicidal. Basically, the death was homicidal in nature, correct?
Yes.
I believe your term was homicidal violence.
Yes.
But you can't tell us how this person died, correct?
That is correct.
There had been questions concerning, is it the hyoid?
Yes, hyoid bone.
And that would indicate perhaps a strangulation, correct?
Yes.
However, in this case, you didn't have that bone to review, correct?
That is correct.
I mean, you can't say if this person died choking, correct?
Can you specify the nature of the choking?
Choked.
No.
You can't say then. That could have happened, correct? That's possible.
That's possible, yes.
This person could have had a pillow placed over his face, correct?
Correct.
And then decapitated, isn't that right?
Correct.
This person could have been shot in the head, correct?
That is correct.
by the way, the defendant was over 20 years older than her stepson when she began that relationship. All right, let's take that break now. We'll get you back to court for more of the state's rebuttal argument in the Broke My Heart murder trial when Court TV Live returns. Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Michael Ayala. We are continuing to watch the verdict clock in the Broke My Heart murder trial of Latasha Daniels going on in Tennessee. The jury has been deliberating now for about an hour and 28 minutes, almost an hour and a half. Daniels is accused of first-degree murder in the shooting death of her lover and former pastor, Brodus Perry, back in 2019, and also the attempted murder of his wife, Tabitha. Now, we've been catching you up on closing arguments. I want to get you back in the court now. The state is still giving its rebuttal.
A relationship. She read the book. What do you lie to her about? Probably more honest with her than he was with anybody else. You may have lied to her. Lying and being immoral is not a capital offense. Latasha Daniels also made a lot of choices. She got to tell you she's not proud of them, Brodes didn't. She made a choice to start the affair. She made a choice to continue the affair. She even made that choice after she claims that he made her feel bad in the hotel room to continue that affair. She made the choice to hide the affair. She chose to go purchase a gun after she got that text. She chose to drive from Little Rock to Memphis. She chose to go to the Perry's house. She chose to take her gun into their home. And you'll note that premeditation, if done prior to the act, so you can premeditate a murder, and then you can go to do that murder, and you can be overcome by adrenaline, excitement, any other emotion you can think of. But if you premeditated it before you do that, and then you follow through with the murder, that don't negate the planning that you did beforehand. Why didn't she shoot him when the door was closed? Think about it all you want to. It's probably hard to pull out a gun and shoot somebody, even if you plan to. You can plan that all the way from Little Rock to Memphis, and it still may be hard to pull the trigger. She made a decision to shoot and kill Brodus Perry, and she made a decision to shoot Tabitha. One of the defense witnesses was Dr. Beheading. What do we glean from her that's helpful? Because I don't doubt she was depressed, and that's what Dr. Beheading said, she was depressed. And I'm not taking that lightly. Depression is an awful disease that affects millions of people. But Dr. Beheading said it doesn't mean that you can't. Dr. Beheading said it doesn't mean that they commit violent acts because they're suffering from depression. Depression doesn't cause that, and depression doesn't cause you to lose your ability to plan, use judgment. And she specifically said that depression is not a cause of impulsivity. So if depression doesn't negate intent and premeditation, it doesn't keep her from being cool, calm, collective, it doesn't keep her from using reflection and judgment, is that helpful to us? You also heard from Dr. Beheading about this defense under Tennessee law called insanity. And what she said was, there's a defense in Tennessee. And if a person is of this mental state where you can't appreciate the wrongfulness of your actions, then they can be found not guilty of the crime, because there are two things, the act and the intent. And she said, this insanity applies when someone is not able to appreciate the wrongfulness of their actions because of their mental state. And I said, well, did you evaluate the defendant for the criteria for insanity? Yes, it was not there. Insanity would not, the criteria were not met when I evaluated the defendant for that. You also heard Dr. Beheading talk about what she called diminished capacity, which in Tennessee is this, you might still be guilty of something, but you're not guilty of the more serious offense because your capacity is diminished because of your mental state. And again, I asked Dr. Beheading, a defense expert, a witness called by the defense. What about when you evaluated Latasha Daniels for this diminished capacity? Didn't meet the criteria for that. Well, Dr. Beheading, the defense expert, what about post-traumatic stress disorder? Did she meet the criteria for that? No. No, she didn't.
In fact, that defense expert ended up saying that this defendant, in her estimation, absolutely understood the wrongfulness of her acts at the time. All right, we're going to take a break here, but first I have this programming note for you folks. High-profile attorney Alan Jackson, who represented Karen Reed, will join Vinnie Politan live for an in-depth interview. Now, Jackson is currently representing Fraser Bone. Now, he's accused of driving more than 100 miles per hour through Malibu, California, eventually slamming into 4 sorority sisters, killing all of them. You're going to get the inside scoop on this trial right here on Court TV. That's Monday night at 9 on Vinnie Politan Investigates. So keep it here on Court TV. We'll be right back.
Tonight on Closing Arguments, a 10-year-old arraigned on attempted murder and rape charges after a brutal attack on a little girl. We'll bring you the latest in this tragic case.
Closing Arguments with Vinnie Politan, tonight at 8/7 Central, only on Court TV.
Did you murder her mother to try and drive her back into your arms? Oh my God.
Interview with a Killer. New episode Saturday night at 8 Eastern and Pacific, only on Court TV.
Welcome back, folks. I want to get you back to court now for more of the state's rebuttal argument.
Dr. Beheading, the defense expert, does potentially wanting to harm herself, does that negate intention and premeditation? Can't say that it does negate intention and premeditation. Well, tell us, Dr. Beheading, about her mental state at the time she committed this offense. I'm unable to provide an opinion about her mental state at the time she committed this offense. What about Dr. Bidding's testimony did you find helpful? I found helpful the fact that she said she did appear to exercise judgment just prior to this homicide. And she did appear to engage in planning in the moments leading up to this homicide. So we've talked about she used judgment, had a cool, calm, and collected thought when she told Tabitha to get out of the way. I don't want to shoot you. Dr. Bidding says she has cool, calm, and collected thoughts all day, up to the moments before the homicide. Then we heard from Officer Duncan, who said he pointed, I saw her point the gun at herself. She was holding the gun. When I got to the door, I said, drop it. She pointed the gun at herself. At some point during that day, did she intend to harm herself? I don't doubt that. But I can tell you what she had at that moment. She had the judgment and reflection not to harm herself. She had the judgment and reflection not to point that weapon at the Collierville Police Department because they had a gun pointed at her. Where's the lack of judgment and reflection? Was she devastated? Was she in love? Were her feelings hurt? Had she spent 2 years in a relationship with a married man and she realized he wasn't going to leave his wife? I don't doubt that. Did she know what she was doing? Yes. And it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate for her. It's unfortunate for Brodus Perry's family. Unfortunate for the widow of Brodus Perry. That doesn't change what happened. Did she plan this all the way from Little Rock? And I'm going to change a little bit and talk about something different here, and I want to be very clear about what I mean when I'm doing this. I submit the proof shows that she did plan this from the time she got the text. But I want to talk about why I think that's not required. It's impossible to know what she was thinking because we can't read her mind. Was she planning to kill Brodus and herself? Maybe. That doesn't negate the fact that she killed Brodes and that she did it on purpose, intentionally, with premeditation. Did Brodus ask her to go to his house? I mean, his reaction says no. The history between the two of them says no. A hidden app. Got to have somebody with us. We went 2 years, we hadn't told her. He didn't want Tabitha to know. So the history between them indicates no. So the evidence is contrary to her description of what happened. And again, I'm going to emphasize that because I'm going to make another argument. But I want to read. The evidence is contrary to what she describes as happening. But it really doesn't matter. She's asking you to consider voluntary manslaughter. And kind of the difference is the killing resulted from a state of passion produced by adequate provocation from the alleged victim.
All right, that adequate provocation might be a problem. Now, the jury is about 1 hour and 47 minutes into deliberations, as you can see. We do understand, we're getting word from that courtroom that they have a question, but we don't know what that question is just yet. We do know that if they can't reach a verdict tonight, they will resume deliberations tomorrow. That's right, on Saturday. So let's bring back my guest, still with us, criminal defense attorney Silva to discuss. Silva, I want to talk about this premeditation thing. He made an interesting point about the fact that did she form the idea to kill him when she left Little Rock? It's about a 3.5-hour drive down to where they were. And then he said, you know what, it really didn't matter. And I agree 100%. I don't think it matters if she formed it then. I mean, he thinks she did. I don't think it matters because you can really form it in an instant.
Absolutely, Michael. And I think that was an imperative distinction that he made. When she thought about doing it before she did it, if she had any thoughts before the action, it takes away from that passion defense. What I loved what he did, Michael, is he took everything. He took the mental state at the time of the events and completely disqualified that. He kept on talking about she chose. And I think that really makes his argument so strong in front of the jury because it's not that she snapped, right, Michael? She chose. I think those words are really important to the jury and really does show premeditation in ways. I really think it's a masterful argument. It's a little slow. I'm sure when the jury heard it, they were like, okay, enough, we get it. But I think it's an essential argument to keep them focused on the fact that no matter when she thought about killing, it's enough for premeditation. And this was not a snap decision. Every decision she made was chosen either to kill him and herself or just kill him. Incredibly effective.
Yeah, I would agree. This whole thing is really just about a series of bad choices on her behalf, and that's what's coming across in his closing argument. And he pointed out something that I had been underlining since the very beginning, the testimony of Tabitha, the wife here, who was also shot. There was one point where she said she was leaning him over her husband, and she actually tells her to move out of the way, and she ends up shooting her instead. I think that little interaction, I think that supplies all the intention you need, all the premeditation you need, because the gun is there, it's in her hand, she's pointing it at these two people, right? So she tells her, move out of the way, because I really want to kill him. She shoots him, there's transferred intent to her, because even the unintended victim will now be, the intent transfers over to that person. So I think that one little interaction does in the defense completely.
Oh, absolutely. You know, Michael, it's funny because when you think about it, if it was this rash snap decision where all she wanted to do was shoot him and shoot herself, right? You would think that she wouldn't even think to say, you know, move, like even to think that way. She would be shaking. There would be some kind of automated response there. But there isn't. You know, it's funny, Michael, because again, as a defense attorney, I think she, when she testified, when Ms. Daniels testified, I understand her thought process, though, too. You know, saying, you broke my heart shows a woman broken. But everything she did, it's just hard for me to delineate. It is premeditation. She just acted in a way that she knew what her target was, and she was after that target. So again, it's just what you said in the last segment. If this happens, if there's any juror that's doubting, it's going to be a jury nullification because I think they did prove beyond a reasonable doubt there obviously was a plan here in some capacity sometime before the murder.
Yeah, again, we all feel for her, the background she had, the situation this guy put her in. But as the prosecutor said, Silva, she put it perfectly. She said if a broken heart was a defense to murder, she'd be out of a job. And that's really where I think I'm landing on this, and a lot of people online landing there as well. We'll see what this jury does. All right, Silva Megadichian, thank you so much for being with me. As always, my friend, have a fantastic weekend. Folks, stick around. Coming up next, we're going to review the 3 things that we've learned today in the cases that we've been covering from coast to coast right here on Code TV. Here are three things that we've learned on this Friday. First, in California, Ashley Buzzard, the mother of missing 9-year-old Melody Buzzard, has been arrested on a false imprisonment charge that authorities say is unrelated to the ongoing search for her daughter. Now, this comes as new footage has been released showing Melody and Ashley wearing wigs at a rental car office on October 7th before a cross-country trip. Investigators believe Ashley swapped wigs throughout the trip to avoid recognition. When Ashley returned from the trip on October 10th, Melody wasn't with her. Second, former NFL star Antonio Brown has been arrested on an attempted murder charge. This is stemming from a shooting after a celebrity boxing event in Miami. Now, according to an arrest warrant, Brown is accused of grabbing a handgun from a security staffer after that boxing match on May 16th and firing 2 shots at a man he had gotten into a fist fight with earlier. Today, Brown will return to Miami after he waived his extradition. And third, family members of a 5-year-old child who was allegedly starved to death are suing the child's mother and the Indiana Department of Child Services for not doing more to help. Kinsley Welty's father and paternal grandfather claim that she was subjected to years of torture and abuse before her death. Kinsley's mother, Tony McClure, and her mother's boyfriend and McClure's mother are all charged in connection with Kinsley's abuse and death. All right, I'm Michael Ayala. It's been a pleasure being with you. Thank you so much, as always, for being with me. Coming up next, Bethany Deaton was a young wife and nurse with a bright future. But when her body was found in the backseat of a minivan in October of 2012, it left her family and law enforcement questioning if she took her own life or if she was murdered. 48 Hours investigates. Then ahead at 8 p.m. Eastern, tune into Closing Arguments. Vinnie Politan has the disturbing story of a 10-year-old